Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our weekend wrap-up show. My apologies for being a few minutes late. Forgive me. A little restart on the computer on the laptop was necessary to get us started here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, presented here by SG1 College Football. So welcome in everyone who joined us last week and on Friday as well. So this is our landing spot every Sunday and Friday. We thank Chris at SD1 College Football and SD1 Sports for inviting us here, me personally, to host our weekend wrap-up show, our weekend preview show on Fridays and Sundays at 6 o'clock Eastern Time here at Mark Rogers TV. And again, I'm going to be in the habit of saying here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. But of course, our home on Fridays and Sundays here is on SG1 College Football. So we hope you found a home here. We know that Chris is moving some things around. Please check out his video that basically goes through the history of the channel. It's very interesting. Goes through the history of the channel, his approach at that point, his thought process in changing some things, and why he is. And for those of you who want to get into the sports gaming, stay in touch with that. Follow that. It's SG1 Sports, and stay right there. And also keep it locked in here at SG1 College Football, where he has moved, of course, his college football content. And our delivery this week again of our weekend wrap-up show on a Sunday night after a very momentous weekend of college football, starting on Friday night with a comeback, then a comeback, then a comeback, back and forth between Maryland and Minnesota. The Gophers, an 18-point favorite that got down by 14, scored 31 straight to go up by 17, blew it in the fourth quarter to a hapless Maryland team from the week before and losing to Northwestern by 40. But they found themselves a quarterback in, it's got a familiar name, Talia Tagovailoa, the new Maryland quarterback. He throws right-handed. But he is pretty similar to his brother. He might be more athletic, actually running around, and certainly posted better numbers and more prolific numbers in the high school ranks there in Hawaii. 14,000 yards and 135 touchdown passes, and he was up to the challenge of a 17-point deficit. So think about that. Maryland loses by 40 points. They come back home. They go up 14. They give up 31 straight. When you've lost by 40 points and it's 5 days later and you've given up 31 straight points to go down by 17 in the fourth quarter, I don't know what the confidence factor is at that point. Can't imagine the level of confidence is that high in the football team. And they made it all the way back to win the game, and PJ Fleck can't find any punter or kicker, and they missed their extra point in overtime, 45-44. And Minnesota, one of the teams that we highlighted over at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, a video that we just released about an hour ago of our stock market watch, those teams that are the high risers and the ones that are on the decline, the trends in college football. And we have Minnesota on that negative list in the bear market for 2 consecutive losses by 4 scores to Michigan, who doesn't look so great now. And then, of course, Minnesota losing to Maryland, who appeared to be the worst team in the Big Ten before Friday night. But there were more important games and more meaningful, impactful games that will count toward conference championships and college football playoff appearances later in the weekend. We saw Texas, Oklahoma State. Of course, Alabama wiped out Mississippi State, the number 1 team in the land. BC throwing a scare into Clemson fans. They got the scare with the Trevor Lawrence COVID news on Thursday night. And then another scare in the first half against Boston College and Phil Jurkovec on Saturday. Ohio State fans, no such scare against Penn State and Happy Valley. Michigan fans take a bit of a hit and a shock as a 22-point favorite against Michigan State. We will get into all of it. And, of course, look forward to week, I believe we're in week 10. Is it week 10 now? Week 9? I lose track. Because all the conferences are in a different week. And for the Pac-12, it's week 1. I can keep track of that. The Pac-12 The Pac-12 desperately wanting to get its teams some exposure and grab some prime television real estate. Of course, that typically happens in prime time. But if it's not in prime time, over the last couple of years, Fox has made that noon Eastern time window prime real estate, putting its best game, its biggest game there to counter what happens on ESPN and ABC later, with the prime time windows being the prime time windows with the best games. And so USC and Arizona State, they will kick off at 9 a.m. local time. Arizona State, USC, best game in the Pac-12 this Saturday, 9 a.m. local time on the West Coast. So those boys are going to have to not only be ready to play for the first time since last December, early January, to play a game that's meaningful and impactful and against guys that they don't see in practice, as they say, to play in anger for the first time in forever, but they'll have to do it at 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. sounds early enough, but take into consideration pregame meal, getting up, stretching, doing all those things to work out, get a lather up, get out there, run drills, get prepared for the game. I thought I heard a 4 a.m. possible. I think Urban Meyer made the comment during the Fox pregame show that he would have his team up at 4 a.m. for a 9 a.m. kickoff. So they're going to have a whole lot of fun. I guess it'll keep them out of trouble on a Friday night. I'll look at the live chat and get your comments and questions and debate topics there as we review the weekend and look forward to next weekend. Of course, the defending national champions look anything but. 35-3. They went down to Auburn, lost 48-11. Nicholas Lindbergh, great to see you here in the chat. I think you checked us out at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So it's nice to see some new faces here. And again, I get to see and make contact and engage college football discussion with a lot of you that I've never talked to, never seen before. So it's great to have you on board. Again, lock in on the conversation and the content here at SD1 College Football. Check us out at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football as well. And if you really want to step it up in regards to what we're doing, check us out on Patreon. I just left the link. There. It says SD1 Sports College Football, but that's coming from me. That's our Patreon link, 15 cents per day. 15 cents per day. You get the live insider look, 15 cents per day. Live insider look, exclusive live streams per request. Then we get the betting advice from Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info. You get my predictions. We had a watch party on Friday night as well. That Maryland-Minnesota game we led off with. We did a watch party. So watch parties, live exclusive live streams featuring you, meaning you, if you've seen some of my shows where I bring on guests, you can be that guest. You can be that person coming on talking college football with me and other college football fans. Those are the exclusive live streams that we offer per request. And again, an insider look at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and all that we do there. All right, let's get to what you got here. Keep in mind that the super chat is on. This is not a hobby. This is full throttle all the time, full-time job deal here. This is what it is. I quit the job at ESPN a few weeks ago. Many on my channel know the deal and know how I built the channel and now have taken that next step. So we would appreciate all that you could do. Nicholas, go green, go white, go MSU. So, of course, Nicholas, by looking at your profile picture, I kind of figured it was either Michigan or Michigan State, and that was a big deal for you. And we found out the other night it's go green, go white, Michigan State, Sparty. So you've put Rutgers in the rearview mirror. Once you beat Michigan, and I was going to call them Big Brother, but you probably don't like that. I wouldn't like it. But for Mel Tucker to get his first win at Michigan State, and you would have thought, because of the way the schedule typically plays out with non-conference games against the group of five, and in particular Big Ten teams taking on the MAC, that Mel Tucker's first win at Michigan State would have been against Western Michigan or somebody like that, but it came against the Maize and Blue. How sweet it is to go into Michigan and to pull away with a win, 27-24. So maybe Mel Tucker's got a good shot at Michigan State. Maybe the forecast is brighter than I anticipated there in that division with that recruiting landscape and facing that team down in that southern state of Michigan. That's a bit difficult to deal with. All right, Sam the Ram, go Bucks. Sam, we've got a Ohio State channel as well. Go to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, Ohio State. So I believe just look up Voice of College Football, Ohio State. Find our Ohio State channel. So we've got some of the best writers that cover Ohio State football on a regular basis. Steve Hullwagon from Bucknuts, 247 Sports. Kevin Noon from Rivals, Buckeye Grove. Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop. My analysis, we all converged there to talk Ohio State football. So check out the videos there. I think you'll like what you see. The voice of college football, Ohio State. All right, Rand, good to see you tonight. We got Sam the Ram, MSU is bad, but Michigan is worse. Rand, Auburn should be higher. I mean, who has Coastal Carolina played? So you got to check out the top 25. This is maybe something I need to enlighten all of you guys on. It's going to make your life so much better. It's the top 25 that actually makes sense. Forget the AP, forget the coaches poll. The coaches don't vote for those things anyway. They hand the ballot to the sports information directors. So the coaches don't vote in the top 25. They may say, make sure we're number 6, and then here you go. Fill out the rest, or make sure that Auburn's not in the top 25. And then they let the SID fill out the rest. So the coaches don't care about everybody else. They're so focused on their team and watching game film of their opponent. They don't know what's going on in the other conferences. And then, of course, the AP poll is inconsistent and illogical. It doesn't make sense for so many reasons. And I got tired of shooting videos and basically blasting and tearing apart the coaches poll and the AP poll every week to say, look at number 7 versus number 11. Okay, look at their resumes. Why are they ranked like that? It doesn't make any sense. So I finally said, you know what? We need to release a top 25 every Sunday that makes sense. So check out my video on my channel, top 25 that actually makes sense. Just released, let's see, at like 11 or noon today. So every Sunday morning around noon, something in that range, we release it. So there you go. So you don't have to worry about issues like Coastal Carolina and Auburn. Toasty, good to see you. Anybody else? Any questions here? Wyatt, good to see you as well. Minnesota blew it. Yes, they did. They can't kick. They can't punt. They can't stop the ground game. We thought that maybe Michigan was going to take off this year on the strength of that Minnesota win, that meant so much, beating Minnesota on the road by 4 scores, because Minnesota was bringing back all 5 offensive linemen from that 11-2 team, plus a starting quarterback who had the best rating in America outside of Joe Burrow and Tua and everyone that was leaving for the NFL. Tanner Morgan, 30 touchdowns, 7 picks last year. 2 excellent wide receivers in Rashad Bateman and Chris Ottman-Bell. 1,000-yard running back from 2 years ago, Mohammed Ibrahim. And some playmakers on defense, although the defense was the concern. Antoine Winfield gone, others gone. And that Michigan win we thought was somewhat significant. I didn't expect Minnesota to be some huge factor this year, but I thought that they were an 8-4 kind of team. Of course, they're not playing the full 12 games this year, but you know what I mean? That type of level team. I picked Minnesota to go 6-3. So Michigan comes off that win that looks so impressive, in which they average over 8 yards per rush, and they can't run the ball against Michigan State. They give up huge plays. The two enormous issues I see for Michigan football against Michigan State was, number one, the running game non-existent after the huge day in Minneapolis. And then number two was the corners could not cover Bateman, or could not cover, I'm still lost in Minnesota, could not cover Ricky White, true freshman for Michigan State. Game one against Rutgers, an insignificant one catch for 5 yards, and then he just busted loose. That's what Michigan State did, was hit for chunk plays downfield, big, long plays downfield. I'm curious to see Ricky White's recruiting ranking. So Rocky Lombardi, I was not impressed with him. I can't imagine that anybody's been impressed with Rocky Lombardi, 43% passer in the 16 games plus the 3 games that he started coming into 2020. So I thought when Rocky Lombardi won the job at Michigan State, I thought, this tells us a lot. This tells us that Michigan State is in bad shape, that if they couldn't find another quarterback besides Rocky Lombardi. But Rocky Lombardi turned in a nice effort against Rutgers. He threw the 2 picks. Those were costly. Of course, the 7 turnovers killed them. But Rocky Lombardi had a great passing day downfield. The percentage, not great, at 17 of 32, but for 323, they burned Michigan. The corners, when they weren't holding or committing pass interference, were getting burned. And so Ricky White, breakout game for Michigan State. So we're talking about a kid who was underregarded, and maybe he won't turn out to have some amazing career at Michigan State. Maybe this is an aberration. Maybe this was his day, his career day, just happened to be very early in the career. In his second game, 70th rated wide receiver in the country, 70th, 40th rated player out of the state of Georgia, a top 400 player in that range, number 416, according to the 247 Sports Composite out of Marietta, Georgia. Ricky White, what a day he had. Mason is telling us Clemson does not deserve to be number 1. So my thought is that Clemson has not been number 1 in my rankings the entire season. They don't play a good enough schedule, so I base my rankings on number 1 results. Wins, losses. Seems pretty obvious. But then number 2 is the performance on the field, which is an interpretation or evaluation of the performance, the win or the loss. So if you beat team A 50-0, that's evaluated or judged differently than if you beat them 50-45. The game's still the same. The result's still the same. If it was the NFL, it'd be the same thing. All that matters, all that should matter in objective sports standings would be win or lose. But we're at a place in college football, and always have been, where we've got to evaluate the team. So a 50-0 win over team A is different and should be evaluated differently than a 50-45 win. So I go by the results, number 1. Number 2, the performance on the field, the evaluation of the performance. And number 3, the quality of the opponent, whether it's a win or loss, who did you play? And yes, so Clemson is number 2 in my rankings. They have been number 2 the entire season. They weren't the first week because they didn't play a good team. They played Wake Forest, so they weren't even anywhere close to number 2 the first week, because I base it on resume. I don't go into the season and think, well, Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama are amazing, so they're going to be my top 3. No, I base it on the resume. So even after week 1, it's a resume ranking. So I've got Alabama at number 1 as well. Michigan State, do I have Michigan State ranked? I do not have Michigan State at 25. I'm still weighing the loss to Rutgers. I would have to rank Rutgers ahead of Michigan State based on the results, because that makes sense. It's a ranking that makes sense. So I do not have Michigan State quite ranked, but if they continue to play well, of course they will be. Oh my goodness. Nicholas, don't tell me that Michigan's ranked ahead of Michigan State. It only backs up and confirms what I came on here and ranted about for all that time to tell you guys don't look at the rankings. They suck. People are incompetent, both with the AP apparently and the coaches poll. Those people are incompetent. They stick to their preconceptions, whatever they preconceived and perceived to be the truth. They just stay with it, even if the results are different. So don't tell me Michigan's ranked ahead of Michigan State. That can't be. They just played Saturday, and they're both 1-1. Now if a team beats another team, and like South Carolina last year beat Georgia, and they were 4-8, and Georgia was 11-1. Of course, Georgia's still ranked, and South Carolina's not. So it's a complete resume. But when two teams have the same record, you rank the team that won the game higher. That's why you actually go out there and compete. The game on the field should actually matter, not what's in people's heads. Oh, I got to check this out. Seriously, I may go off on this. This may turn out to be a video that needs to be shot. Oh, my word. Michigan is number 23 and number 25 in the two polls, and I don't see Michigan State anywhere. Are you serious? How pathetic. How insanely pathetic. Awful, 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 awful. Okay. All right. Do we have any other issues like that? Okay. The AP and the coaches poll were finally smart enough to figure this one out, even though they didn't get it right after the game for another week or two, where Texas A&M beat Florida head to head, and they had Florida ranked ahead of Texas A&M. Okay, yeah, Michigan's ranked still, and Michigan State is not. Idiotic beyond belief. Okay, great. All right, that's awful. Yes, it's biased. It's all biased. Wyatt says MSU is not good. Regardless, if you're going to rank a team in the state of Michigan, it should be Michigan State. That can't even be debated. It can't be debated. Now, if this was later in the season and Michigan was 7-3, I know they're not playing that many games, but in a regular season, if Michigan was 7-3 and Michigan State was 6-4, Michigan State won the head-to-head, well, you could make an argument. But they're both 1-1. Sam likes Notre Dame at home against Clemson. Austin telling us that LSU sucks. It is tough to imagine, isn't it? LSU is that bad. Folks, join us on Patreon. It's a good time. We've got watch parties. We've got exclusive live streams featuring you if you want to take part. Per request, you make your request, I jump. We do live streams. Also, you get the insider look at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, which includes 30 years of broadcasting experience in the television industry at the highest levels. Just an insider look into that and how we're building out our platform and our channel. You get the betting advice from Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info. You get my predictions. You get a lead pipe lock of the week from Steve. Wyatt asks, is Cincinnati a playoff contender? Yes, they are a contender. I find it difficult to figure out a scenario in which they will make the playoff, but they're a playoff contender. They need a 2-loss Big 12 and a 2-loss Pac-12 champion. And they also need for there not to be emerging out of the other three conferences a strong candidate for number 2 in those conferences. They don't need Notre Dame to win this week against Clemson and then just lose the ACC championship to Clemson by 3 points. Or they, especially since Clemson is the big favorite and the favored team in the ACC, they don't need Clemson to win this week and then Notre Dame to win the conference championship and Clemson only to lose by a field goal in the ACC championship game. They don't need that kind of scenario where a Notre Dame or a Clemson is a strong candidate as a second-place team. Cincinnati also doesn't need that out of Texas A&M or Georgia, where Georgia upsets Alabama. Alabama's the consensus number 1 team that's killing everybody, but then they lose in the SEC title game to Georgia by a field goal in a great classic game. So Georgia's got to go to the playoff and Alabama. I don't see that scenario now with Penn State dropping 2 games happening in the Big Ten. It would have to involve a team that we're not expecting. But let's say Northwestern goes undefeated, and so does Ohio State, and Northwestern beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and the Wildcats are undefeated. So, of course, they make the playoff as the Big Ten champion, but Ohio State's a one-loss team that only lost by a field goal in the conference title game. Cincinnati does not need a scenario like that. They need the slate clean of any strong second-place teams, and, of course, the Big 12 to cannibalize, and the Pac-12 as well. That's what Cincy needs. I grew up in the great state of Ohio, Sam. I'm a Buckeyes fan. What is great, though, Sam? I don't know if you checked out my channel, but people can't tell who I root for. I've had people watch for years, and they have no idea who I root for. I've had Ohio State fans just as of just maybe 4 or 5 days ago. I had several Ohio State fans comment to my channel that I must hate Ohio State. So that's how fair the analysis is at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Again, everyone, SG1 College Football right here. Please subscribe, lock it in, check out the videos, and, of course, get on over to my channel, the voice of college football, Mark Rogers TV. Mason likes Ohio State as the best team this year. I can see that. They've got coverage issues. That was apparent against Penn State. The secondary was the one aspect of the Buckeyes team that looked not up to the challenge in Happy Valley. Toasty asks, do you think Ohio State will have a quote-unquote trip game this year? Oh, okay. Like they struggle against teams they shouldn't or even lose, like Iowa, Purdue a few years back. I don't see that happening, but it certainly can. They don't have a difficult schedule. They avoid the better teams in the Big Ten Western Division. I think they've got Purdue. No, Illinois. So they already beat Nebraska. They only played 2 instead of the typical 3 Western Division teams. And there's no Minnesota, which we thought Minnesota was going to be better, but there's no Iowa. There's no Wisconsin. There's no even Northwestern. They've got Nebraska. They're done with them. They beat them by 5 touchdowns, and they've got Illinois. So it's not a difficult schedule for the Buckeyes. They do not play that team in the Western Division that could trip them up like they have in the past. Iowa in 2017, Purdue the next year. Eddie Rose is asking, what do I think of what happened between Missouri and Florida? I only heard about it. I kind of saw it in the background while I was working. I didn't really catch that whole thing. There was a late hit on Kyle Trask, I believe. Let's look into that real quick. Okay. And then Dan Mullen went ballistic, and players were suspended. Oh, so Dan Mullen is accused of instigating something here. Okay. Okay. Gators coach Dan Mullen is being accused of instigating the bench clearing brawl that erupted on Saturday when Missouri's Trajan Jeffcoat delivered a high and late hit on Florida quarterback Kyle Trask. Mullen could be heavily fined or even face suspension for his role in Saturday's fight. I should have looked into this. I didn't realize that it was more than just somebody didn't like a late hit and they got into a fight. For his role in Saturday's fight, after video from the game appeared to show the coach storming off the field as he began to shout at Missouri players on the field. Immediately after, a huge fight broke out among players. Mullen headed back to the tunnel with the team, but came back out to fire the crowd up. Reaction on social media was critical of the head coach. Several people were calling for fines or even a suspension. He shouldn't go back out onto the field to fire up the crowd. That's instigating more of a violent just atmosphere and vibe. Remember the big NBA fight about 15 years ago? That type of scenario, that type of scene, which we certainly can't have our head coaches perpetuating that type of situation. Only 3 players were ejected from the game, but the conference could dole out more punishment following its review. After the game, Mullen defended himself, saying that he was trying to get our guys off the field. From my understanding, I think our guys thought they took a late hit at our quarterback. They're going to protect him. That's their guy. I think they were going to protect him. I think both sides were trying to get people off the field, but everyone was a little edgy and it probably went a little too far with it. We were trying to get our guys off the field in the middle of it all. It is what it is, an emotional game sometimes. He continued, I don't condone it. I'm not real pleased about how it all played out, obviously. Further punishment for the Gators could spell trouble when they take on number 5, Georgia. The game is likely to decide the winner of the SEC East. Okay, we'll have to dive into that because that's a whole new level of situation when you've got people that are instigating it at levels of authority, possibly. Let's look at another account here. This is from Saturday Down South. Following a questionable late hit on Trask, Gators players, including head coach Dan Mullen, rushed to midfield to have some words for Missouri and protect their quarterback. Reaction on social media started to pour in immediately about a potential fine for Mullen. After the game, the Florida head coach downplayed everything. So he says what we already heard. A camera angle followed a heated Mullen to midfield, and it shows the Gators head coach in the middle of it all, shouting at Missouri's players and coaches. Following Mullen's actions, that's when things got really ugly between the players. Okay, we see late hits all the time. Now, if this would have been something like a Missouri player body slammed Kyle Trask, and it's something that you see once every 20 years, and I could see that type of rush of emotion to where this is an escalated situation, so the head coach needs to get involved. Or if it's a situation where there's an action and the officials aren't taking care of it, there's a late hit, it's not being dealt with properly, it's been ignored, it's not being seen because there's more of a threat, there's a continuing threat to an individual, but that doesn't appear to be the issue here because the Florida players were right there. So typically what happens is that there's a personal foul and that's the end of it. There's a personal foul. The officials throw the flags. There's no continuing activity or action that's threatening to anyone. But even if there is, it's typically dealt with by the officials that are able to separate the players. Now, of course, we saw just the players were all over the place, but that was after Mullen rushed the field. So I'm trying to determine why in this particular situation he felt like he had to rush the field and protect his quarterback when his quarterback had 10 other players out there, and it wasn't like there was a late hit and the Missouri player continued to just wouldn't let Trask up or started punching him or continued some kind of violent act against Kyle Trask. So based on those accounts, and I'll have to watch the video, it appeared as though Dan Mullen was way out of line. Jimbo, Oklahoma State is a much better team without Spencer Sanders. He had 3 turnovers in the first half with Shane in. Oklahoma State beats Texas by 14 plus. It's a good point. Sometimes you live with, if you choose to, and you play that particular type player, you live with the high ceiling of the positive plays, but turnovers kill. Oklahoma State dominated that game statistically. Almost 600 yards of total offense to Texas's less than 300, but 4 turnovers to 0, and the return yardage in those penalties and in the kicking game allowed Texas to take it to overtime and win. It's a fair point. A quarterback, take any box score of any game, and you'll often see a quarterback who throws for 430 yards and another quarterback throws for 180, and you wonder why the quarterback with a 180-yard passing day won the game. And let's say the rushing yardage was similar. Turnovers kill drives. Turnovers set up short field for the other team. Sometimes they set up points directly, turn into points directly, but turnovers are worth hundreds of yards by themselves. So it's a fair point about Spencer Sanders. Talented player. I watched every play of that game. I thought, and this is unfortunate when you watch a lot of quarterbacks in particular who are extremely talented, gifted players, dynamic players. All it takes is about 3 to 4 bad decisions per game. You're going to have a few bad decisions. It's impossible to play perfectly. But once you get into that 3 or 4 range, that's too many. If the defense takes advantage of all those, and Texas's did. Yeah, Jimbo, they led the Oklahoma State defense held Texas to under 300 yards. They looked the part. They're fast, they're aggressive, they run to the football, they don't blow coverages, they play tight coverage. That's something that's often lost even among the better secondaries out there, is that that Oklahoma State pass defense, they broke up so many passes. My opinion on Shaun Wade, well, he had an off game on Saturday night against Penn State, but the tape tells us that he's an exceptional player. But for some reason, he was not on his game the other night. And Sevyn Banks had an awful game, too, in the Ohio State secondary. My dark horse pick for the playoffs, speaking of Texas, are we talking about now? Who would I pick? So I've got to be transparent that my preseason prediction was Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Texas, who could still win the Big 12 and somehow make their way into the playoff, but they're going to have to be awfully impressive. They're going to have to be flawless with 2 losses, of course. So they're probably done. Right now, my dark horse pick for the playoffs, that's kind of difficult to say when we're already in the midst of a season. So they can't be a dark horse, really, because they have to be undefeated or right there, or they're really a dark horse because they really have no chance. I'm not predicting, I'm not predicting this team to make the playoffs. But if you want a dark horse, that's has a fair chance. It would be Arizona State. Brandon, do you think Notre Dame has a chance against Clemson? I'm a Notre Dame fan, by the way. They do have a chance. They're at home. When I saw that Clemson was down 28-10, I was watching Michigan State primarily and keeping my eyes on every game as I do. I've got 4 screens up and I'm watching as much as I possibly can. And then once it got to 28-13, it was halftime. BT Potter hit that field goal right before half. I thought, okay, this needs to be my game of choice in the second half based on what's going on. I figured, okay, if Clemson's losing as the number 1 team to Boston College, who's a capable team, but not a great team, a top 40, 45 team, that DJ Uiagalelei must be having an awful first half. He's probably 10 for 23 with 3 picks. No, he played exceptional. He played, considering it was his first collegiate start, he looked great. I was extremely impressed with him. It's easy to see why he was the number 1 rated quarterback coming out of high school. So Notre Dame's not going to have that in its favor to be able to pick on a guy that's going to have to be protected in regards to play calling. Looks like Clemson's pretty much going to be able to do what they typically do. I'm sure they've limited the playbook to a certain extent. And then Travis Etienne was used as a receiver in the second half, much like the college football playoff game against Ohio State, where as a traditional running back out of the backfield, Ohio State had the answer for Etienne. Boston College had the answer. 11 carries, 29 yards in the first half. So then they switch modes and they say, you know what? He's going to become a pass receiver. And he caught the game-winning touchdown. He caught passes for 140 yards. Do I think Notre Dame has a chance? Of course they've got a chance. A Georgia team that went on to come within a whisker of the national championship, losing to Tua and company in overtime, only beat Notre Dame in South Bend by 1 point. Very similar situation, although we didn't know at that point that Georgia was going to be that good. So, yeah, they've got a good shot. I'm going to give Notre Dame about a 30% chance of winning that game. Michael, great to see you. Mark, how are you doing today? I have to say that week 3 for the Big Ten is going to be a huge week for a few teams as I consider this elimination weekend for Purdue, Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Okay, so when you say elimination weekend, do you mean elimination from the college football playoff? You're talking about elimination for a Big Ten championship because Purdue's 2-0, Indiana's 2-0. They can lose and still be in okay shape. It would be better for them to win, of course. So I don't see it as an elimination weekend. It is for Michigan in the East. They can't go down to 0-2 and expect Ohio State to lose to somebody else and then beat Ohio State to win the Big Ten East. That's possible, but it's not likely at all. Especially if Purdue and Wisconsin don't play this weekend. So, yeah, the Big Ten, what a 2 weeks for the conference, huh? Adams Apple, Michigan State should not be ranked either. They lost to Rutgers. Simulating sports games. Hey, please join us over at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I think you'll like what you see. I've answered the question there from our guy, Michael Hogue. He's been a faithful viewer, follower for quite a long time. And I think he would vouch for what we do on a daily basis. We go live all the time, every day, post videos constantly. Lock it in here at SG1 College Football as well. Austin is asking, why is Boise State ranked 21st? But I kind of get it. They have scored 40 plus games, 40 plus in 2 games against Utah State and Air Force. I would not be too concerned about the rankings. Michael, the thing about Sparty is they're most likely taking the loss to Rutgers into consideration. Little Stephen Curry likes Florida to beat Georgia. Okay. Georgia's going to have to figure out how to score some points this week. There's no question about that. They played it ultra conservative at Kentucky, and they could afford to. They held the Cats to 3 points. I believe Georgia has the best defense in the country. And they've got that stable of running backs, and Zamir White was exceptional against the Cats. But they've got to loosen up the defense. They have got to be able to stretch the field, use George Pickens and Kyrus Jackson and company in the passing game. Michael, as where you have Purdue, I can somewhat agree with you on that, but I would have them around 15. If they get it done, though, against Wisconsin, if they play, I would say they're in the top 5. And the top 25, that actually makes sense. Okay? Michael, understand that that's not in a vacuum. The resume can only get so good if it's compared to everybody else's. So them being in the top 5, well, look at the top 5 right now. What about BYU? Are they going to be in the conversation if they run the table, or they need help? They need serious help. They need beyond 2-loss help in other conferences. Their schedule's just not good enough. Who's BYU going to have a win against? Boise State. They're not going to have a Power 5 win. Their schedule's awful, and it's not their fault. Because their schedule was wiped out and they did everything they possibly could to patch together a schedule, but it's just so bad. You know, they're playing low-level group of 5 teams every week. I just don't know what to do with BYU. An undefeated BYU is going to need at the very least, 2-loss conference champions, and they probably need teams to lose 3 games. That's the only way I can see it playing out. They beat Navy by 52. They beat Troy by 41. They beat Louisiana Tech by 31. They beat Texas San Antonio by 7. Beat Houston by 17. I saw that game. They beat Texas State by 38. They beat Western Kentucky this last week by 31. They've got Boise State. That's huge. We'll have to do a preview on that game. That's a Friday game. I like that one. And then after that, UNA and San Diego State. They've got to hope that San Diego State and Boise State have exceptional seasons. They, of course, have to beat them. But other than that, they need them to go out there and play exceptional football. It's just not going to happen. Hey, Mason. Got John Sarian coming over from our channel here. Mark is an equal opportunity hater. Buckeyes fans, Canes fans, Clemson fans, all fans think he hates their team. Thank you. This does happen. It comes around at some point where everybody thinks at some point, Mark, you hate our team. Why are you against our team? Michael, okay, Mark, where would you rank the Big Ten West teams from 1 to 7? Okay. Are you talking about in my rankings, the way I rank them, or just who do I think is the best team to the last team? If you're just talking about who's the best team, we're not talking about how good they are. We're not talking about their resume. So my resume ranking would be whatever I've got my 3 teams, I think, from the Big Ten West that are in my top 25, Northwestern, Purdue, and I guess it's just those 2, Northwestern and Purdue and Wisconsin. That's how they would be ranked in my resume ranking. I would go Northwestern 1, Purdue 2, Wisconsin 3. Who am I missing? Illinois' last. Minnesota's next to last. That's a close call. Nebraska's fifth, and Iowa, even though they're 0-2, they've played close. So your resume ranking here, Michael, is Northwestern 1, Purdue 2, Wisconsin 3, Iowa 4, Nebraska 5, Minnesota 6, and Illinois 7. Now, who I think at full strength, Wisconsin's 1. Man, I haven't seen these teams enough to know, and nobody, not because I haven't watched them, because they've only played 2 games, but to differentiate Northwestern and Purdue, I'm going to say Northwestern's 2, Purdue's 3, Iowa 4, Nebraska 5, Minnesota 6, Illinois 7. Mark, Ohio State is going to smoke Illinois by at least 35, if not more. Yeah, they will. Indy Kid 3, could this finally be the year where we see a group of 5 in the college football playoff? And of course, that would be Cincinnati. They're the lone hope. Boise State's not going to play enough games. And since he has the impressive wins over UCF, Memphis, SMU, they beat Memphis by 39. They beat SMU by 29. They're not just winning in what could be the 5th best conference in America. It's probably 6th still. But they're blowing people out. They're dominant. And they've got 3 other games that they need to be impressive in. UCF, Houston, and Tulsa. Toasty, why is Tulsa not ranked? They are ranked in the top 25. That actually makes sense. They are ranked, Toasty. So please lock in on the rankings that make sense. Why is Tulsa not ranked? They lost to Oklahoma State barely, and Oklahoma State still looks like one of the best teams in the nation. True, exactly. And that's why I've got Tulsa ranked 18th, I believe. They had a 2-score lead in the 4th quarter at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State without Spencer Sanders. They beat UCF. They beat somebody else good. Yes, Mason, there should be an 8-team playoff. I have certainly argued that point for years. Indy Kid 3, who is more to blame for Michigan's loss, Joe Milton or Harbaugh? Harbaugh. Not Milton. Milton played a decent game. It was his 2nd start. He played fine. Harbaugh and Don Brown. Offensive line didn't run block. Playmakers didn't get open. Michigan State's defensive backs. This is where this was surprising. Michigan State won this game in a number of ways, but their wide receivers outplayed Michigan's DBs. And Michigan State's DBs outplayed Michigan's wide receivers. Michigan made plays in the 1st quarter, and I thought Michigan's too fast for them. You could see it where they would outflank Michigan State and get to the perimeter, and guys like Blake Corum, too fast. A.J. Henning, very impressive, interesting player for Michigan, a freshman. Like to see his recruiting ranking. Very interesting and creative player for Michigan. They only got him 2 touches, but he will be a factor at some point. A.J. Henning, Michigan wide receiver, 18th rated wide receiver in the country, out of Frankfort, Illinois. 2nd rated player in Illinois, a top 100 player, 102, top 100 player in the nation, regardless of position. A.J. Henning, Michigan. Then we saw Blake Corum, same thing. These guys looked too fast in the 1st quarter for Michigan State, but Michigan State adjusted. Blake Corum, his 247 composite ranking was his 12th. Number 12 running back, number 6 player out of Missouri, number 129 player. Lofty, that's lofty. It's lofty status. Top 100, 120, 150, regardless of position. So where I was surprised that Michigan State won the game was the skill positions. Their DBs were better than Michigan's wide receivers, and their wide receivers at Michigan State were better than Michigan's secondary by far. Mason says, I don't like any other college team, but I respect all their fans. I only like Ohio State. Sam, who do you think has the best chance in the Pac-12 to win the championship? Oregon's got the best team. USC is certainly capable. Arizona State would be my somewhat dark horse. Love Jaden Daniels. He's tremendous. Mason says the team up north needs a new coach. They will not get one this offseason. Jim Harbaugh is making too much money. The buyout is too much. He's got a contract in play through 2021. I believe that 2021, if I'm running the show at Michigan, I sit down with Jim Harbaugh in the offseason and I say, hey, Jim, thank you for your loyalty to the university. Thank you for being one of the greatest quarterbacks players ever here, a true Michigan man, a Bo disciple. You've done a nice job here in raising the level of play, raising the recruiting. We are a much more respectable team than we were 5 years ago, but you're not getting it done. We need a Big Ten championship. You need to deliver a Big Ten championship in 2021. Michigan State didn't run the ball. They threw the ball. So Don Brown's run defense was fine. Michigan's defensive front should be one of the best in college football with Carlo Kemp and Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson. Mason Riddle, Oklahoma State, even though they lost this weekend, I don't know what that's an answer to. Repeat Misty, North Carolina was and has been overrated, and people are now realizing. Yeah, North Carolina's had a very underwhelming season. I know they're 4-2, but their 4 wins have been lackluster. They beat Syracuse. They were leading by 4 points in the fourth quarter. They beat Boston College on a failed 2-point conversion with 45 seconds left. They beat Virginia Tech. It was a close game in the fourth quarter before they pulled away. Their one impressive showing was against NC State, but it was against a backup quarterback. And to lose to Florida State is one of the worst teams in the Power 5. To lose to Florida State and now to lose this game that they lost to Virginia, a Virginia team that has no quarterback, is struggling mightily at quarterback, and to give up 44 points and lose to Virginia as a full touchdown favorite, it's a bit embarrassing. We've answered the BYU question. So many of you coming on the line maybe a little bit late. If I don't answer your question or get to it, it's because I probably already have. So definitely wait until the video posts and then go back and check out what you missed. We talked about Sean Wade. We talked about BYU. Indy Kid 3, Master Teague or Trey Sermon. Well, this is not a situation where we've got Zeke Elliott, J.K. Dobbins, or Carlos Hyde who needs to carry the ball 20 to 25 times, and the next back comes in for 3 to 4 carries. Ohio State does not have a back like that. They've got a very loaded backfield, a very deep backfield with capable, talented players, but nobody close to Dobbins. So there doesn't have to be a choice made there. They both have to play. They have to play. Look at Alabama plays 4 backs. Not currently, but they have in their recent history. Alabama got into that trend when Saban got there, and it was TJ Yeldon and not Derrick Henry, but before Stacy and Yeldon. And then they got into the trend with 2 backs, and then they started to get a 3rd back, and now they've basically got 4 NFL running backs most of the time. Curious, Master Teague's recruiting ranking. 11th rated running back in the nation. The 6th rated player out of Tennessee, 228 national player. So, yeah. So keep in mind, we've got the super chat going. So it's your opportunity to support what we do here. We are full-time, full throttle all the time. And this is a revenue stream that we need to take advantage of. So we would appreciate anybody out there who feels moved in that way, that the super chat is on. You can also contribute to Mark Rogers TV by using Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Let's see. Where did I leave off? Right there. How well do you think Rutgers can do in the Big Ten? Courtesy repeat Misty. I think they can do rather well. Greg Schiano knows what he's doing. He built the program the first time. So long term, Rutgers can be a 7 or 8 win team that goes 4-5 or 5-4 in the Big Ten, goes 500 in the Big Ten, wins its non-conference games, goes to bowl games. That's their ceiling. They're not going to win the Big Ten. They do have a good recruiting footprint in New Jersey. New Jersey's a good high school football playing state. And Greg Schiano, again, he knows how to run a program. So we've seen what can happen. And Greg Schiano is not a great, all-time great coach. He's not Urban Meyer or Nick Saban. But we see what can happen when a capable coach who knows what he's doing and can give team confidence and structure and teach them and inspire them and give them focus can do. Plus, he was able to get out there in the transfer portal and bring in players from around the Big Ten, bring in some capable reinforcements, not star players, but very capable starting players, role players from places like Michigan. So Rutgers right now looks like, based on losing to Indiana by 17 points, I didn't see any of that game. I watched the Michigan State game a few days later, saw about half of it. I think, they could, where I thought that they were with Illinois, the worst team in the Big Ten. I think now that they could win 3 games this year. They could go 3-6. Nicholas, do you think anyone else could win the Big Ten this season? So in the preseason, Penn State, of course, looked like that team. They have the best roster other than Ohio State, but they lost their best defensive player, maybe the best defensive player in the Big Ten, and they lost their best offensive player, Journey Brown. Now their best offensive player is a tight end. You don't want that to be the case. So Penn State, more than any other team in college football right now, looks different this early in the season, more different than any team in college football than they did in the offseason. So I don't know if they're still the second best team in the Big Ten. They probably are not. Michigan looked like that second best team in the Big Ten after week 1. Now it's a mad scramble, and maybe it's going to turn out something close to what I predicted, actually. I didn't see Penn State as that 8-1 kind of team that was only going to lose to Ohio State that could make a college football playoff run. I picked Ohio State to go 9-0, and I picked Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota all to go 6-3. So I predicted a large gap, and that's what it looks like. So I generally believe no. Now understand that Ohio State could be clearly the best team in the Big Ten, and then they could go lose the conference championship game. So they could play a team they could be 8-0 and play a team that's 5-3 in the West and get upset. That doesn't mean they're not the best team. That just means they lost on that weekend. Michael, as for the Big Ten championship and who stands to hurt the most for Michigan or Wisconsin if they lose on Saturday? Well, it's always going to be the team that's already lost. Michigan. Michigan can't lose another game, especially in that division with Ohio State. Now, Western Division teams can lose 2 games, possibly. Julian, LSU sucks so much, 48-11. Yeah, what has happened there? So it's going to be interesting to evaluate Ed Ogeron as a head coach 5 years from now. Was he the guy that lucked out one year with Joe Brady, Joe Burrow, and Dave Aranda, and they put it all together and had a magical season, a dominant season, one of the greatest teams of all time? Maybe played the most daunting schedule of all time for a national championship team. And then he just goes 8-4. He becomes Les Miles, who had a great run from when he first took over in 04. Nick Saban 03, 04, 05. Les Miles was 05. 05 until that BCS title game loss to Alabama. That was a great 7 years for Les Miles. Won a national championship, went to another BCS championship game, dominant in the SEC, top 5 recruiting classes, winning 10, 11, 12 games every year. And then after 21-0 to Nick Saban in New Orleans, then Les Miles couldn't get out of his own way, and it was 8-4, 9-3 every year. And LSU was the team that disappointed every year as a top 5 talent team, going 8-4, going to the Music City Bowl. So does LSU go back to that? Well, it sure looks like it is. But they're still bringing in a haul of talent. Yes, Austin, that was my dissertation off the top. The AP Top 25 and the Coaches Poll, awful. Well, Carl, Jim Harbaugh is not the worst Power 5 coach. Jim Harbaugh started at San Diego and took a losing program and turned it into a winning program. Jim Harbaugh then went to Stanford and took a program that had not won anything since they went to a Rose Bowl in 1999, had not won for 7 or 8 years. We're going, 1-11, 2-9, 2-10. That was right around that time where we were transitioning from an 11-game schedule to a 12-game schedule. And he made them a power in the Pac-12 going to BCS bowl games. And then he went to the San Francisco 49ers, and they were going 2-14. And he pretty much took the same roster and went to 3 consecutive NFC championship games. Jim Harbaugh, even as we sit right now, for a coach that has at least, 60, 70 games in the NFL as a head coach, has one of the best winning percentages in the history of the NFL. Came within a completed pass in the end zone of winning the Super Bowl. Then he goes to Michigan and takes over a team that went 5-7, turns them into a 10-3 team, finishes in the top 10 his first year. Now it hasn't worked out. But still, Michigan football is in much better place right now, despite the fans don't like it, don't like Harbaugh, don't like what's going on, and it's not good enough. I'm not defending him, but he is a good coach. Now he's being paid to win championships, and he's not. So he's going to have to be held accountable for that. All right, more on BYU. We've addressed BYU quite a bit. Carl, I have not made my predictions for the Pac-12. I'm going to have to look at that, but it appears to be a USC-Oregon championship. I have predicted the Pac-12 championship game correct in the preseason before the season started the last 2 years. So hopefully I can do that again. Utah, Washington, Utah, Oregon. Utah's lost a lot. They got Jake Bentley, the former South Carolina quarterback, will start for them. I think Oklahoma is very talented. Their defense is actually playing pretty good football. They routed Texas Tech, of course, on the road. Spencer Rattler, They are changing their play calling and approach. One thing that got lost in his early season struggles is that OU, typically known to be a prolific passing team, has been a great rushing team. That's what's lost in the national narrative concerning a lot of these great offenses, is that we see them as high flying, but they also have strong power running games. And Oklahoma did not have that the first 4 or 5 games of the season. They only ran for about 3.6 yards per carry, and now they've taken off. And they had a great defensive performance at TCU. They obviously did last night. I didn't see any of the game, didn't need to see it. They just crushed Texas Tech. Spencer Rattler, I've been so impressed with his ability. He can throw it, he can spin it. There's no question about that. Throws himself into trouble at times, but he'll learn. So I think they're a threat. They're in a difficult place because Oklahoma State and Iowa State have 1 loss. OU's one of the teams that has 2 losses, and they lose the tiebreaker to Iowa State head-to-head. They've yet to play Oklahoma State. Obviously, OU's got to win out, and they could. But they lose one of the main tiebreakers. Spot on with your ranking of the Big Ten West, but I have to give the nod to Purdue over Northwestern by a smidge, because I don't think that Maryland is going to be as good as Purdue has played 2 teams. Okay? Julian says that LSU is the worst defending national champion of all time. Go back and look up the 1991 Georgia Tech football team. They weren't very good. So they come to mind. But you're certainly on the right path. Sam the Ram, who is your top 3 group of 5 teams? Cincinnati 1, Boise State 2, and Coastal Carolina 3. Julian has Georgia winning this week after pulling out some trick plays to get the offense rolling. Does Kirby Smart know any trick plays? I thought it was 4th down. Who has a chance to win the Big Ten? Ohio State's got a big chance. They've got a chance. After Ohio State, I think Graham Mertz and Wisconsin, they're the best team. But I do not like their running game, and that's weird to say about Wisconsin, but they don't have what they've had in the past. All right. I thought it was 4th down. Is the Sun Belt better than the Big 12? Well, based on results, it is. I don't believe that to be true, to be completely honest and serious. But when Arkansas State and Louisiana are able to go up against 2 teams that are fighting for the Big 12 championship right now in Kansas State, who came into this weekend at 4-0 in the Big 12, and Iowa State, and beat them. So the evidence says that you've got an interesting point there, and that maybe the Sun Belt is better than the Big 12, but realistically, it's not. Super chat. That's a great question. I know that when I've contributed to folks on the super chat, what I've done is depends if you're on a laptop or on a phone. What there should be, it's kind of difficult because I can't see it the way I'm set up here because I'm running this software so that I can post your comments. But the super chat should be underneath all your comments. There should be a $sign down there, and it's going to light up in a big green or blue or yellow, and you fill out your name and you fill out the amount right there. And let me see what this thing looks like. Let me go to SG1. There's our live stream in all its glory. Yeah, so I'm looking at it right now on my laptop. And so down at the bottom of the screen, I don't see it right there. I don't know. I will have to look into that because it's not displaying like it does on my channel. Let's see here. If you go to live chat. Yeah, see on the customary live chat, it's got a $sign down there somewhere where you can click on that. So I don't know what the deal is there. Thanks for asking, Nicholas. I appreciate it. Johnny Bays, is everyone ready to complain about how Notre Dame is so overrated when we are number one in the country in a week? Hopefully you're not talking to me. Daniel, yeah, can't do super chat. I'll have to look into that. I don't know what that, especially since this is my way of making money now that I've quit my job and resigned from ESPN after 19 years. This is what I'm looking to do. So I have to make money. I have to ramp this up quickly or start digging some ditches somewhere. So the super chat would be good. I don't know what the problem is there. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. You can just search Mark Rogers TV as well. But I don't know what the deal is. I'll have to talk to Chris. I thought it was fourth down. Can Indiana snap the losing streak against Michigan? Of course they can. Will they? That's another question. Will they? Can they? Of course they can. They just beat Penn State. Sure. Carl, Buckeye fan. This sounds biased, but they are the bottom Big Ten team. All right. Anything else? Cheryl, bottom Big Ten team. Illinois, Minnesota, Maryland. Anything else? Anything else out there? I appreciate everybody stopping by. And once again, lock it in here at SG1 College Football. And check us out on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Just go to your search bar here on YouTube and look up Mark Rogers TV. Head on over there. Check out our videos before you subscribe. See if you like what we do. We go live almost every day, usually multiple times per day, and crank out college football talent. We released our top 25 that actually makes sense. Our stock market report for college football, the high risers and the teams that are plummeting. Hey, Cheryl, see you tonight. Thanks for checking in. And yes, we will go live tonight with our call-in show. Our call-in show comes tonight at midnight Eastern time. So check us out there. And also we've got guests, bloggers, broadcasters from around the nation that come on a consistent basis. We've got a Nebraska live show on Thursday night. We do Florida State, Ohio State, and SEC live shows on Wednesday night. It's a good time. So we will see you then. Check us out on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And again, keep it locked in here at SG1 and college football. Enjoy the week. Enjoy your weekend and college football. And check us out. We'll see you soon.